Thanks very much, Bulelani, for that. And of course, one of the issues that will be uppermost in people's minds is the issue of empowering the youth. We know that we have a massive problem of youth unemployment, and it's an absolute waste because if for many years young people are not given opportunities to grow and to work and develop skills, at some point people overlook them because they'll look at younger people perhaps, and then you just get this perpetuating cycle. And the really negative thing about youth unemployment is that you need more young people to be employed to be able to pay for things like retirement in the future. And if you don't have sufficient people working, that's going to really create a massive imbalance in terms of, you know, the welfare state that we currently enjoy. But anyway, let's get into it with Ndumiso Kubeka. He is from the NYDA, the National Youth Development Agency. Thank you so much, Ndumiso, for joining us. So it's a burning issue. It's a burning issue year in, year out. We hear lots of undertakings being made and, you know, promises, etc., etc. But for you, what is the reality on the ground? Have we seen improvements over the years? And what are you hoping that the Finance Minister is going to say today?
Yeah, thanks, Nompu. I think it is on the ground a very difficult situation where young people are hungry for opportunities. And of course, there are quite a number of active labor market programs that are out there. We know the usual EPWP. We also have the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, which has shown somewhat of a kind of center of excellence when it comes to transitioning young people from those pathways to either work or self-employment. And so I think that center of excellence presents an opportunity of what more can be done to support young people. But of course, the question of education, how we strengthen those pathways from basic education to higher education as well, given that the structure of the South African economy is knowledge intensive and services based. But as well, we're faced with the phenomenon where industries are changing. And with the changing of industries, how do we then reskill young people to be able to be responsive to the digital economy, for example, the mechanization that happens in agriculture, knowing very well that in agriculture, the average age is north of 65 years old. When you're looking at infrastructure, I think in the medium-term budget policy statement, there was an outlook around investing R1 trillion in infrastructure projects. Yeah. The question then becomes, how can we then plug young people and coordinate that work through those projects on the ground for work exposure, for employment opportunities, and also building the skills pipeline in the infrastructure space.
And I think the key thing is the issue of meaningful opportunities. You know, we hear about work opportunities. For me, that always sounds really dodgy because it's like, you know, it sounds like you're just filling a gap.
Yes.
You actually need to nurture someone so that they can actually grow and be productive to society. How concerned are you around that? Because we really need a situation where people are getting proper skills.
Yeah, I think it's a major concern. Firstly, because the cost of living continues to rise, and so I think the Reserve Bank's intervention around flattening the inflation target should be able to help to have moderated expectations around the cost of living. On the other side, I think the question of what we mean by decent jobs becomes an important definition to really crystallize, so that even as we create a competitive economy where young people can serve as a growth engine, we're very clear about what decent work actually means in the digital economy. We know that, of course, in e-commerce is a booming sector. Young people are always online. The selling of products and services online is an opportunity there. But even in that space, what does decent work look like? Even when we look at other industries, the tourism sector is a high employment multiplier industry. Young people can play a role in that particular area. But again, how do we define decent work in that particular sector? So I do think that there's more deliberate work that we need to do to define those areas as we try to build a competitive economy that young people form part as the growth engine of going forward.
The director speaking in my ear, you have about 1 minute. What about the issue of pumping cash into SMEs that have great ideas but can't necessarily bring them to fruition because of a lack of funds?
Number one, the funding question, the pool of risk capital in South Africa needs to be increased, because entrepreneurship is, most chances, it's really a probabilities game. The more you invest in a particular project or an asset, the greater your chances for success. I think so. The risk pool capital for South Africa, for South African entrepreneurs, needs to be increased. But secondly, coordinated efforts around market linkages. If you have, the South African government that spends R1 trillion in procurement, how do we then leverage that as part of an industrial plan to grow sectors that are strategic for the South African economy, again with young people being at the center of that. Private enterprises as well want to grow and want to be competitive globally. How do we then create those market linkages even in that space to then not only provide the cash funding as well, but also the markets that they can be able to grow into. Again, when consider the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, young people, over 60% of the population in the continent, the biggest consumer group over the next 10 years. So there are massive opportunities and linkages that we can create in addition to increasing the pool of risk capital.
Yeah, no, the opportunities are great. They just need to be crystallized.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ndumiso. So that was Ndumiso Kubeka from the NYDA giving us his views and his expectations on what he's hoping the finance minister will speak to. There's so many interests here that needs to be addressed, and we hope that the finance minister will be able to get that balance right.